Welcome into a special edition of the College Football Recruiting Show. It's our signing day recap. I'm Emily Proud alongside national recruiting analyst Brandon Huffman. Brandon, we are tying a bow on the 2023 class while also looking ahead. So what better way to do that than to start things off with a live commitment from 2024 four-star quarterback Austin Mack. Let's remind you real quick of his top five before we bring him in. You've got Cal, Oregon State, Stanford, and Washington. And Brandon, it sounds like the Huskies are the leader in this camp. What's the latest on his commitment?
Stanford is one of the first schools to offer Austin Mack, but Washington had him up for an unofficial visit back in September for Kalen DeBoer's first ever game as the head coach, then had him on campus 2 weeks ago for an unofficial visit. The Huskies didn't sign a quarterback in the 2023 class, nor did they sign one in 2022, so they're making a push. But can Stanford with Troy Taylor and that Folsom connection win out? Earlier today, we had the top quarterback in Northern California in the 2023 class finally settle on a school. So, Emily, how perfect is it that just a few hours later that the top 2024 quarterback in Northern California is ready to make his announcement just a couple hours later?
It just makes sense. All right, we have stalled long enough. Let's bring in the young man, Austin Mack. Thank you so much for patiently waiting. First off, Austin, a lot of effort and time and years go into arriving at this very day. So first off, congratulations to you. Tell me how you feel. Absolutely. How you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, I'm excited.
You're excited? You're ready to make this decision? I know that you also don't arrive here alone. I saw some people in the camera before. It's just you here, but tell me, who would you like to thank?
First off, I'd like to thank my family for, all that they've sacrificed for me. I'll forever be grateful. I would also like to thank everyone who's been along with me on this journey. And, especially all the way from early mornings to late nights to long weekends. I'm really thankful. And then lastly, I'd like to thank my teammates for always having my back and really trusting in me to really be who I want to be. So, yeah, thank you.
All right, Austin, I'll give you the floor. Tell us, where are you headed?
So, of all the places I visited, there's really only one place I felt like home, like family, and especially with such a great head coach, great coaching staff, and such a great culture that staff has created. I'm excited to announce that I will be committing to the University of Washington.
I love it. Congratulations. You've got the shirt ready. I was trying to see on that table there if there were any hats, but I see you've got the shirt, so nice little reveal there. All right. You're going to be a Husky. Why?
Yes, sir.
Why'd you choose Washington?
Especially after my visit last Saturday with Coach DeBoer, Coach Grubb, it really just kind of opened my eyes to something new, especially with my relationship with Coach DeBoer. I've known him since spring ball last year. So really since then, it's kind of just been building that connection, and especially me and Coach Grubb. I know y'all probably there's gonna be some news, and it's nothing but excitement for me. So I'm ready to get there and get to work.
I love it. All right, I know you're talking to me, but pretend you're talking to the Husky Nation out here. What are they getting in you as a QB?
They're getting someone who's a leader. I would like to call myself a great teammate, but I definitely thrive in a leader standpoint. Yeah, I'm really just excited to build this class and, yeah.
I love it. Looking forward to seeing you play in the 2024 season. Austin Mack going to Washington. Congratulations. All right, let's bring back in Brandon Huffman. This is where we thought it was trending. What's your initial reaction?
Yeah, I think obviously this is a huge pickup for Washington, given the fact that they didn't sign a quarterback in 2022. They didn't sign a quarterback in 2023, losing Lincoln Keenholz late. So it made it imperative that they get at least one, if not two quarterbacks in 2024. And now they have their second quarterback in 2024. They already got a commitment early on from E.J. Kaminong out of Garfield High School in Seattle. But given Michael Penix will be gone after this next season, Dylan Morris has one more year left, they needed to replenish that quarterback room. So they go get a top 10 quarterback out of the state of California. It's a banner year for quarterbacks out west. 4 of the top 7 quarterbacks in the country in 2024 are from the West Coast. 2 of them have already basically said that they're likely heading out of the region. One with Julian Sand already announcing for Alabama, Dylan Raiola committing to Ohio State, then opening things up. It's still trending that way. So now the Pac-12 gets a quarterback. And hey, Husky fans, the last time you had a Folsom quarterback as your starter, you won 2 Pac-12 championships. You went to 3 New Year's Six Bowls, and you played in the college football playoff, the last Pac-12 school to do so. So if they can get that same kind of production out of Austin Mack, not putting any pressure on him yet, if they can get that production, I think Washington fans have to be thrilled. But you got a great 2-quarterback class now with Kaminong and Mack. Washington is able to kind of remedy some of their issues in the quarterback room long-term with this pickup of Boston.
I love it. Wow, a lot of high praise for him. Excited to see what he does for Washington. You mentioned some of the other quarterbacks in next year's class. We're going to break those down right now with our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, and our Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins, here in studio. Guys, he is just one of the first QB dominoes to fall in the 2024 class. Steve, I'll call you out. I mean, who's the next commit to come?
Well, I think a guy to keep an eye on that could potentially come off the board in the near future is Walker White. Top 247 passer from Arkansas, has been making the rounds on the trail. He's been to Baylor, he's been to Auburn, he's been to Clemson, some of the schools that he's extremely high on. And I think that he's nearing a college decision after talking to him after his recent visit to Clemson.
All right, 2 other names we're keeping an eye on is the #1 quarterback in the class, Dylan Raiola, and the #2, Jaden Davis. Andrew, what can you tell us about these 2?
They're taking their visits, right? Steve's been reporting about them all January, and now we're into February. Everyone's kind of waiting to see where they're going to go. Dylan Raiola, obviously previously committed to Ohio State, just at USC. Nebraska's a school we've been talking about a lot. I saw Jaden Davis this past weekend down in Orlando at a 7-on-7 tournament. Everyone was in to see him there in Charlotte. I think he's got his pick of the litter, but Steve likes Michigan. I'm not going to bet against his crystal ball for Jaden Davis, Gatorade Player of the Year in North Carolina.
Yeah, I think that the Wolverines remain the team to beat for Jaden Davis. I think if a school could challenge Michigan right now for his signature, I think Ohio State's probably the program that I would peg as maybe the one that has the best chance. He's also high on Tennessee, high on Clemson, has built a great relationship with Penn State, but love Michigan's position for Jaden Davis and think Ohio State's trying to make a move after losing Dylan Raiola. And then with Dylan Raiola, he's obviously making some rounds as well. Was at USC this past weekend. It was his mom's first time on campus. The whole family loved the experience. Lincoln Riley's track record of developing Heisman Trophy winners and the #1 draft pick in the draft are things that stand out to him, in addition to just the great relationship he has with Coach Riley. Coach Riley personally recruits the quarterback position when he locks in on a guy, and Dylan Raiola is a passer that he covets. Nebraska's another program that's pulling out all the stops early to land Dylan Raiola. Matt Rule went by the school 2 weeks ago, and then this past Friday, the Huskers sent 9 assistant coaches into the building. That's the rest of the staff, if you're keeping score, to show Dylan Raiola what a priority he is. That group included his uncle, the offensive line coach at Nebraska. But Georgia's the program I like right now for Dylan Raiola. I think they've set the tone. He was in the crowd for their victory over TCU for the national championship. His sister plays volleyball for TCU, so that's why they were there. But Georgia's a program that actually was first to identify Dylan Raiola before he was in the top 247, before he was ranked #1 in the country. Georgia offered him a scholarship. He's been to Athens numerous times, and he's expected to go back there in the spring. Oregon's another program that's a contender for Dylan Raiola right now.
Andrew, we're coming off a class where, for the first time since 2009, we have 5 five-star quarterbacks. Early impressions of this overall 2024 QB class?
Well, we like it. From what we've seen so far, 8 of the 16 inside our top 247 have already made commitments. With quarterback recruiting, it's so accelerated these days, it could shuffle up again. I mean, Austin Mack, we just saw him announced for Washington. Washington led the country in passing yards this past season. We're huge fans of him. I think we're ahead of the curve, shooting him up in our rankings. When we audited this class a few months ago, he was a guy we loved. And why? He's got a 6'6" frame. Someone lists him at 6'8". That's why I wanted you to ask him before we got that thing going. But that would put him in the 90th percentile for NFL passers. I mean, this is a guy that can throw it all around the yard. 40 touchdowns this past season, over 3,800 yards passing in California. Had one game where he threw 7 touchdown passes. So we like what we see. This camp circuit's going to be important for us once we get him in the Elite 11 type setting. But it's another great group of signal callers.
And Brandon, you mentioned all the great quarterbacks out west where you are. I'm curious your thoughts just overall on this 2024 QB class.
Yeah, I mean, it's loaded. We've obviously known a lot about Julian Sayin over the last couple of years. Elijah Brown has lost his first game in the final game of his junior season as the starter at Mater Dei, led him to a national championship as a sophomore. Austin Mack, though, he had to wait his turn at Folsom High School. His sophomore year, he was playing JV football, but already had a few Pac-12 offers. but at Folsom. It's a great program. It's had a number of players. Ari Patu, who's in line to be the starter at Stanford as we speak, he didn't start a game there. He had to wait his turn, and then the COVID year kind of messed up his chances of taking over. So Austin Mack had to wait his turn, got thrown into the fire as a sophomore, had to start a game after his quarterback got knocked out, comes back his junior year with the vengeance, throws for 40 touchdown passes, leads Folsom to a section championship, and he showed that he was every bit the quarterback that coaches were offering him based off the camps once he finally got to the live action on Friday nights. And this is a kid with really only 1 year as a varsity starter under his belt. The sky's the limit for him. He's still got a lot of good football left to be played.
Yeah, still looking forward to seeing what they do in their senior season. So that's a look ahead for 2024. But let's go back to the 23 class and tell you what went down on National Signing Day. Welcome into the College Football Recruiting Show. I say that again because we're welcoming in a CBS Sports HQ audience. And for those of you watching on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page, I will remind you to like this video and subscribe to the page so you can be a part of the chat. We do the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern on YouTube, but we are here on a Wednesday for a special signing day recap edition. So let's roll through some of the biggest storylines from today. And at the top, Alabama wrapping up the #1 class in the last 13 cycles. They do this quite a bit. Nick Saban boasting 4 players who are #1 at their position. Andrew, the machine that is the Crimson Tide just got better today.
We talk about our rankings, but 9 composite 5 stars, that's a record. Empire Strikes Back, that's been kind of our punchline here. This is a group that is talented across the board, defensive side of the ball, offensive line, added a bunch of pass rushers. I think the big thing with Alabama is a lot of these individuals could play as freshmen. It's crazy to think about that at a place that's known for built by Bama, churning out NFL talent, but they have some holes in the roster. You look at this list right here on the screen, I think it's some guys that can come in and play early as freshmen. A lot of them are already on campus. Some of them went through some bowl practices, so it's an excellent group. And it shows that Nick Saban has a chance to maybe add another one to the trophy case before he hangs them up.
Yeah, some of those big needs that Andrew talks about. You lose Jahmyr Gibbs, the most dynamic player on the offense. I think Justice Haynes has a skill set similar to him, averaged over 12 yards per carry at Beaufort High as a senior, and showed at the All-America Bowl he could be a force catching the football as well. Like we saw Jahmyr Gibbs oftentimes come up with a big play in the passing game for Alabama. Their offensive line is going to have a lot of turnover at the end of the year. I think there's a lot of potentially ready-made guys at the point of attack for them on the offensive side, starting with Caden Proctor, the #1 offensive tackle in the country, who flipped from Iowa late in the cycle, but Wilkham Formby and Ola Salinen are a couple other guys that I think at least physically could come in and give Alabama something if they need to lean on them. And then this class in the front 7 is outstanding, headlined by Keon Keeley, 57 tackles for loss, 33.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons, the most dominant player on the defensive side that I've seen at the All-America Bowl since Will Anderson. And then I think Alabama's got a massive need in their secondary. Caleb Downs, the best high school football player in the country, top-ranked safety, 19 career interceptions, incredibly instinctual football player. I think like 7 or 8 of those were pick sixes. He's a guy that I think Alabama will count on early, and he'll be able to play at a high level right out the gate for the Tide.
Yeah, for all the college football fans watching right now, who is a name that they absolutely need to know on this Alabama class?
I think it's Caleb Downs, right? The safest player we're calling in the class of 2023. You mentioned all those pick sixes. I think as a junior, he scored in 7 different ways. I think that he needed to kick an extra point or a field goal, and he would have hit the cycle in terms of scoring the football.
Not too shabby. All right, another headline that we're going to touch on today. Our Steve Wiltfong calling this earlier in the day, leading the crystal ball for Nyckoles Harbor to commit to South Carolina. Here he is making his announcement official here. Steve, this recruitment was, in his own words, a little chaotic. What went down with Nyckoles Harbor today?
Yeah, we had Brian Doan on the scene, 24/7 Sports national analyst. He told him that it was chaos, which I think goes along with what we were reporting over the last 2 days here. I think some people think we drum all this up for clicks, but I assure you, we just want to tell you where the young man's going and ride that out all the way through. And I think yesterday at this time, Nyckoles Harbor was going to South Carolina. Then I think a few hours later, I think when Nyckoles Nyckoles Harbor went to bed last night, he thought he was going to be an Oregon Duck.
Wow.
But by the time he stepped to that table there and announced his college decision in front of a packed gym, it was back to South Carolina. And I truly think that's the school he wanted to go to the most throughout his process. I think they led the most amount of time. They were in on him early. He built a great relationship with Shane Beamer and that coaching staff over the course of several visits, was able to get to know some guys in the locker room. And then South Carolina, their recruits, like everybody, have a group text, and Nyckoles Harbor was part of that for the entire cycle. So he got to really get to know the Gamecocks recruits. So I thought he felt real comfortable with the guys on the team, the guys in his class, and the coaching staff. It's a track program where their head track coach has been with the program for 27 years and has had a lot of guys with success on the international level. So I think he's comfortable with that. Proximity to home over Oregon. Look, Oregon had a lot of exciting things to offer Nyckoles Harbor, and I think as he was trying to figure out what he was going to do, Nike athlete, Hayward Field, track capital USA, football program on the rise. Love what Dan Lanning and company are building there. There were times down the stretch where Oregon looked pretty darn good to him, but hey, when it was time to actually step up to the table and put pen to paper and send it in, his gut was with South Carolina, and that's who he announced for. And the Gamecocks have the nation's number 16 ranked recruiting class right now, which is the best that they've ever finished in 24/7 sports history.
All right, so that's how it went down. But he is the #1 athlete, the #1 player on your freaks list. He is a guy that has Olympic goals for next year. What kind of athlete is Shane Beamer getting?
He's faster than some of those wide receivers you see playing on Sundays in the NFL. I looked up the 60-meter dash times he wants to run in the Olympics. Steve brought that up. I think this is just an exclamation point for Shane Beamer in this recruiting class. We would have liked it if they didn't even add Nyckoles Harbor to the fold. I'm interested to see where he plays when he gets to Columbia. I assume it's going to be on the offensive side of the ball as a tight end. And Shane Beamer, not a lot of people know much about him. He's a guy that has a background in coaching tight ends. In South Carolina, it's produced a first-round tight end in Hayden Hurst a couple of years ago. Talk about with this track program at South Carolina, you look at the track roster, they got a football player on there at Emory Floyd, and I think that makes it a lot easier to sell an athlete like Nyckoles Harbor that wants to do two sports. Hey, this guy's doing it. He can show you to do it. So Nyckoles Harbor, I think he's someone that can stretch the field. When you try to find a player comp for him, he's kind of one of one, a unicorn, a Yeti, whatever you want to call him. But think Kyle Pitts in terms of someone that can get it done. He's got a ways to go as a pass catcher, but what I saw at the Under Armour All-America game in Orlando, it was special. There's flashes, just needs some seasoning, but man, he can be an X factor there in the SEC.
All right, so Nyckoles Harbor heads to South Carolina. He was the highest rated uncommitted player going into today. Another guy very highly rated, Jaden Rashada, finally finding out where he is headed. He will be playing his college ball at Arizona State. Brandon, what can you tell us about this marriage?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a perfect marriage. You know, Steve Wilfong and I were working the phones these last couple of days trying to figure out where he was going to end up. And Arizona State, interestingly enough, he nearly committed there 2 years ago. At that time, Herm Edwards is still the head coach at Arizona State. Zach Hill is the offensive coordinator. His father, Harlan, played on Arizona State's last Rose Bowl team. It was the school he grew up watching, and he nearly committed to the Sun Devils. Then the NCAA investigation happened. Some of those coaches were let go. Eventually, Herm Edwards was let go. Zach Hill left. And he never really looked at the Sun Devils much after that. But he was looking at Oregon, was looking at Kenny Dillingham before he ultimately decided to commit to Miami. Then he flipped to Florida. His roller coaster these last couple of weeks have been, much discussed already. But he asked out of his NLI from the University of Florida. Arizona State was the first school to get him on campus. And then Steve reported he was visiting TCU. He went down there this last weekend. They came up to see him. But he eventually comes full circle, returns to his childhood love, returns to one of the coaches he had the best relationship with in Kenny Dillingham. And now Kenny Dillingham, in his first recruiting class at Arizona State, has the signature recruit in Jaden Rashada, a top 50 player nationally, a top 10 player in the state of California, top 10 player at the position, and the top passer in Northern California. He won't sign today because he already signed that NLI, but he will enroll at Arizona State, and he will contend with a couple of transfers and some incumbents already to be the first starting quarterback under Kenny Dillingham with the Sun Devils.
Yeah, and with Drew Pine transferring in there from Notre Dame, a seasoned quarterback that started a lot of games in South Bend, played in some big football games for the Irish over the course of his career. That allows Jaden Rashada, who's one of the best natural throwers of the football in this class. There's not a pass, a throw he can't make on the field. Accurate, precise, with good anticipation. Love the talent here, but he's going to have some he's going to need to develop physically and add some weight to his 175-pound frame, and he's going to a program that's going to allow him to be the understudy to Drew Pine. But I think he's going to be the most talented quarterback in the room for Arizona State as soon as he gets on campus. And this is a guy that gives them a launching point on the recruiting trail from the standpoint of, hey, we have a blue chip quarterback in the fold. We're building something here that's going to be pretty special under this coaching staff here. Jaden Rashada, a blue chipper that could have went darn near anywhere he wanted, is here with us at Arizona State. Let's start building around that. So big close to the 2023 cycle for Arizona State. And yeah, I think it'll help them bear fruit in 2024.
Yeah, how about the quarterback class in the Pac-12? Brandon, Oregon missing out on Nyckoles Harbor, but they did land a top 10 cornerback in the class in Rodrick Pleasant. What is Dan Lanning getting in him?
Well, he's getting the fastest football player in the country, a guy that would probably win a race against Nyckoles Harbor, Zachariah Branch, Malachi Coleman, and Dylan Edwards, and a guy who has legitimate aspirations of not just competing in the 2024 Olympics, but being on the medal stand when the Olympics are in his hometown in Los Angeles in 2028. And that's where most people thought he was going to play his college football, was in Los Angeles for USC. And Dan Lanning, just like he did back in December when he swooped in and got Mateo Uiagalelei away from USC, he goes back into the Southland, goes back into Los Angeles. When you think of the great players that have played at Sarah High School historically, they've almost all gone to USC. Rodrick Pleasant seemed like he was a lock for the Trojans, but instead Dan Lanning goes into Sarah, gets not just a great cornerback, but a legitimate Pac-12/NCAA champion sprinter and a guy who could be an Olympic gold medalist in a few years from now.
It's crazy. We saw Nyckoles Harbor and Rodrick Pleasant race multiple times at the Under Armour All-American game. Rodrick actually beat Nyckoles Harbor. I think if the track was a little bit longer, I would have taken Harbor in that race. Both these guys could be in the Olympics. You're going to be sitting there at some point down the line. We might remember this day when they both made commitments. I just love the addition to Oregon's class as a whole. I mean, we early signing period, they were the big winner for us. Now you add them with Dalen Austin, Cole Martin in the secondary. I mean, Dan Lanning. They scored points with Bo Nix at quarterback, but he knows a thing or two about defense, and he just continues to build out that secondary, add SEC caliber players to Oregon, and it's probably going to make him a force in the Pac-12 once we see UCLA and USC leave for the Big Ten.
All right, so one of the big question marks leading into this day is where would Deuce Robinson go? We do not have the answer to that question, but I think a lot of people are asking the timeline when it comes to Deuce Robinson. It sounds like he's eyeing the Major League Baseball draft. An ideal situation for him would be to get drafted, play professional baseball, and then walk on at his college choice. So from that perspective, Steve, can you explain how that process would work for Deuce Robinson?
Well, obviously, if you're Georgia, you're disappointed today that he didn't sign with you because you've been the perceived favorite for a long time here. And it's because he has pro aspirations as a baseball player and a football player. And Georgia's track record of developing tight ends right now is second to none in college football, in addition to the relationship component that he had with Todd Hartley, Kirby Smart and company. This delay in making a decision where I was told he told college coaches he needs more time, I think opens the door for USC to certainly make a move. And several sources told me to keep an eye out for the Trojans in this recruitment moving forward, as Lincoln Riley can point to guys like Mark Andrews, who he had a ton of success with at the tight end position in Norman. And then as far as the baseball thing goes, your co-host Blair Angulo kind of educated us a little bit on that. Look, this is a young man that's going to hear his name drafted. The question is, Major League Baseball programs determine what signing bonus they want to give a young man, what draft pick is worth investing in a young man. Is he going to play college baseball? Is he going to sign with us? Then what parameters is he going to live under per our contract with him? So there's a lot of things that will have to be moved around with Deuce Robinson. He's going to have to make some decisions based on what a potential number a baseball franchise might be willing to throw at him, but then might come with some parameters on other sports and things. So look, what we do know is like Rod Pleasant and like Nyckoles Harbor, he is an elite two-sport athlete that certainly is guaranteed a shot at professional baseball. And I think right now he views Georgia as the best chance to give him a shot at professional football. But USC is a program that seems to be rising with him down the stretch. And again, Lincoln Riley, it's not chopped liver what he's produced at that position.
Yeah, an exceptional athlete. Brandon, you've seen him play. Obviously for a lot of these college teams, he is worth the wait. Please explain why this kind of guy will add immediately to whatever college team he chooses.
Well, I think you look at him and, we've got him ranked as the #1 tight end in the country, and for good reason, because we think that's what he's ultimately going to project to. But this is a guy with his size and with his skill set has been playing receiver at Pinnacle these last couple of years. And this is a guy that, as talented as he is, he's never fully focused on football because of the baseball, yet he's still been out there and been one of the most elite pass catchers in the country, regardless of if he's a tight end or if he's a receiver. Getting a chance to see him at the Polynesian Bowl. He came fresh from a workout for the Los Angeles Dodgers on that Monday, flew out to Hawaii. By Tuesday, he was already in practice and running with the ones on his team. And you should have seen the connection that him and Nico Iamaleava were making in practice. And you see a guy who, spent a day in a relatively stressful job interview working out for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and then he flies across the Pacific Ocean, ends up and looks like he had been in Hawaii for a couple of days, as smooth as they come, a big body receiver who can catch the ball. He can block if he needs to, but you're not going to utilize him as a blocker. You're going to split him out wide, you're going to put him in the red zone, and you're going to find ways to get the balls into his hands so you can let him show his talent as a pass catcher, his wide catch radius, the range, his ball skills, all of that stuff. Whoever gets him is going to find an immediate impact receiver, whether that's in the slot, whether they do decide to put him in line as a traditional tight end, or however they plan to use him. They're going to get the ball into his hands and let his playmaking ability go to work.
All right, so the wait continues for where Deuce Robinson will play his college ball. Brandon Huffman, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having us.
All right, we are going to say goodbye to our CBS Sports HQ audience, but if you want more analysis from today, like we're about to talk about the transfer portal, as you see here, we are keeping this show rolling on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. Join us there and check out all of our signing day coverage. All right, guys, we're talking transfer portal class here. We're going to need some more help to do that, though, because 3 is not enough. Let's add our 4th. As we know, recruiting is more than just high school players, and who knows those guys better than our friend Carl Reed. Carl, it's all about how you use the portal in addition to who you bring in from the high school ranks. So let's start with a class that we believe did a great job of building both of those, and that's Florida State. What stands out to you about them?
Florida State was able to identify needs, and that's the big thing. A lot of people try to say, when you're asking for how many high school kids do I have versus how many transfer portals do I have, some guys want to stay to a certain percentage, but I think what Florida State has done is they have just identified needs. And when they identify needs in a player who can fill them, they have went and got them, whether it's transfer portal or high school. Some major additions for Florida State this year in the transfer portal. For the second year in a row, they've dominated it, and Mike Norvell is doing a great thing, and he has that deal rolling. When you think about the recruiting class that he's been able to put together at Florida State through the transfer portal in back-to-back years. And one of the biggest things that he may have done is convincing the star of last year's transfer portal, Jared Verse, to stay in Tallahassee for one more year. Florida State is going to be a problem this season in not only the ACC, but in the big playoff picture.
To follow up Carl's point here, I shared a sideline with Mike Norvell earlier in the season, and he told me they just want to add the best football players. They don't care the junior college guy, kid from high school, kid from the transfer portal. I think when we talk about portal to acquisitions for them, they point to what they've done on the field. Jordan Travis, that's a kid who started his career off originally at Louisville. You look at Jared Verse, Johnny Wilson, and now with this group that they've brought in, I think they got our #1 ranked defensive lineman in the 24/7 Sports transfer rankings, the #1 tight end, the #1 corner. They have the right formula right now, and Florida State is going to be favored in a lot of games in 2023. That's going to allow them to recruit the high schools and then go get those veterans. Come here, play for a little bit, head off to the NFL.
Fentrell Cypress was an all-ACC cornerback for Virginia, now playing at Florida State. Braden Fisk to beat Notre Dame, for him to add him to a team. Look, Florida State, they had a top 10 offense this past year. They were top 15 on defense, 10 wins. They're right on the cusp here of building on something strong. Great recruiting class, great transfer portal class. Arrow up on the Noles.
All right. Thank you to everybody who stuck around and watching us on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. Be sure to like this video if you believe that this is the best signing day coverage. I'm pretty biased. I do think that we have done an exceptional job here covering this today, especially the guys next to me. But we're going to keep it rolling here. So again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, do all of the things. Carl, should they do that? Is that?
They should do all of that. I'm sitting here with the 2 very best guys in the recruiting landscape, and Andrew Ivins and Steve Wilfong. Nobody knows the information the way that they do. There's not a better host in the game than Emily. So you gotta tune in. You gotta subscribe. It's one of the best moves that you can make.
Carl, that was so sweet. We love you too, Carl. Thank you so much. Let's keep it rolling here though, because we brought you in for some business. We'll talk afterwards and give our hugs and everything there. But Carl, let's go to Colorado. I mean, what they've done so far in just the short time with Deion Sanders there in Boulder. What impresses you the most about this class that he's been able to bring in very quickly?
Well, the biggest person he was able to bring with him was Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is arguably one of the top players in the country, and his best player for sure coming into the University of Colorado. When they left Jackson State, there was a lot of talk that Hunter may be going to Georgia, that Hunter may be looking at Alabama or some other schools, but he went to Colorado. Also, you have to look at the quarterback. His son, Shedeur Sanders, in the transfer portal, gives him an instant plug-and-play quarterback to run that offense that he hired Sean Lewis, offensive coordinator from Kent State, to run, as well as the surprise that he got, Cormani McClain. Cormani McClain ends up signing today, and that ends up being a big deal. A lot of excitement at the University of Colorado, a lot of big-time players on the horizon, and they've done an excellent job in recruiting in both the transfer portal and high school.
43 new faces will be part of the Colorado football program for spring football, coming off a 1-11 season. So this Colorado coaching staff diagnosed some needs. Obviously, they're bringing in some help right away here to try and get this thing off the ground sooner rather than later. This is not something that they want to be a lengthy rebuild, and the transfer portal allows them to compete much quicker than that. We saw Mel Tucker have some major success in the transfer portal 2 years ago with guys like Kenneth Walker and I think Deion Sanders, and what I think is a terrific coaching staff that includes Sean Lewis and our National Recruiter of the Year, Charles Kelly, his defensive coordinator. I think they got to work, hit the ground running, landed a lot of former blue chippers in the transfer portal, had some big recruiting wins at the end of the cycle, and they have overhauled that roster very quickly in Boulder.
Jimmy Horn's the guy I'm excited to see. I mean, Travis Hunter, he's our number one player, generational talent for a reason. But Jimmy Horn, a kid that was at USF, had a ton of different options, could have went to Houston. Penn State was kicking the tires at one point. They got him on Christmas, Coach Prime did. And Steve, you brought up the 43 new faces? I mean, Coach Prime said he was bringing some Louis luggage to Boulder. Well, this is it right here. And they're all on campus, so you follow them on social media. They're doing the workouts, mat drills, and all that stuff. So Colorado is going to be in position to potentially win some games early on in 2023.
Hopefully those workouts are happening inside. It is probably pretty chilly this time of year in Boulder, Colorado. We are just 10 likes away from 100, so if you could get us there, that would be absolutely awesome. But the first two teams that we mentioned are two top 5 transfer portal classes. So these are guys that get a lot of publicity for what they're able to do in the transfer portal. But again, this segment is here to highlight just making that all-encompassing class of using both recruiting and the portal to bring in the best possible class. So Carl, Ohio State, they are 47th on our transfer portal rankings, so not that team that gets a lot of attention for what they're able to do. But what is it about this entire Ohio State group that shows you that Ryan Day did a great job building both through the portal and through recruiting?
Well, Ryan Day and Ohio State is one of the programs that can still go out and attract the very best high school players in the country because Ohio State is a brand name. They get guys into the National Football League. They're going to have an opportunity to play for championships, and that name is still going to bring a great deal of credibility every time you're sitting down with a 4-star or a 5-star athlete. So Ohio State is one of those programs that won't have to dip into the portal too much. They still have the ability and the know-how to go and grab some of the best high school players in the nation. Ryan Day still has a bunch of recruiting momentum and has done an excellent job attracting high school talent.
Ohio State crushed it on offense, right, with those wide receivers. We talk about them at length. Jelani Thurman, the tight end, but they add 2 battle-tested defensive backs. Ole Miss transfer David Igbenogson. I always stumble on that one. He comes from Ole Miss, went up against some of the top wideouts as a true freshman there in the SEC. I know some people in Oxford that were super high on that kid the day he stepped on campus. I'm sure they're upset that he left. Added Jihad Carter from Syracuse, another veteran player in the secondary, and they need some help on the back end defending the pass. So Ryan Day, it's a good little haul for them. It might not be as big as some of the others, but those are guys that you can pencil into the 2 deep and provide depth right away.
Yep. And as we've seen, coaches have different kind of portal standards and their own philosophy as far as how they use the portal. But what we're really highlighting here is just the guys that do a good job of making sure that they use a couple different tools that are at their disposal. So how about Brian Kelly and the work that he's doing at LSU? Carl, what are your early impressions of what he's building through both the portal and high school recruiting?
Brian Kelly has hit the ground running ever since he got in Baton Rouge. He's even adjusted his accent to fit in with the locals, so it's exciting. Taking the momentum from beating a team like Alabama down the stretch, has added key guys, transfer portal, high school. He's got a bunch of guys in there that fit his mold, big guys on defense that can run and that can hit, good offensive linemen, a really good class by him on both sides of the ball.
I think that ultimately Brian Kelly would like to use the transfer portal in a similar fashion that Ohio State and Georgia are using it, where it's like, hey, we're deficient in a room because we lost some guys to the NFL draft or injury, or maybe we did misevaluate a couple guys and we need to upgrade that room. Or a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs goes in the portal and he's just better than everybody we got, and we want to add him to a championship caliber program like Alabama did. But LSU, Brian Kelly inherited a football team that before he got there was 5-5 and 6-7, which isn't the standard to LSU. And they're trying to rebuild that quickly into a championship contending program. They won 10 games this year. They played in the SEC championship, but there was still a lot of depth issues, particularly in the secondary, where they needed to put a Band-Aid on it with the transfer portal. But with a top 10 recruiting class this year and a really good recruiting class in 2023, number 2 early in 2024, I think the hope is to eventually not have to be so aggressive in the portal and just find difference makers to help get a program closer to winning a national championship.
Denver Harris, a former top 32 guy for us at cornerback. He comes over. You mentioned that the cornerback depth there. We know LSU can churn out some defenders. Deuce Chestnut, another guy that comes over. He was excellent as a freshman for Syracuse. I think you're right, Steve. Most of these programs, what they want to do is they want to build through the high school ranks. I always compare that. That is kind of drafting. And then you look at the transfer portal, that's essentially free agency. So if you can hit at certain positions, which LSU has done. They have 2 young bookend tackles. We talked about Zalance Hurd earlier on the show. That allows them to kind of devote some resources elsewhere. So premium positions, build in-house, and then go get the free agents if you need them.
Right, that Southern accent and the dance moves are certainly working. We laugh, but look at those results there. All right, how about Ole Miss? Carl, we know Lane Kiffin loves to go shopping for some quarterbacks in the portal.
Transfer to the SIP, that's been his thing. Walker Howard at quarterback, Spencer Sanders. Everybody has talked about how many quarterbacks do you need in the room, but obviously he knows his roster and what he's looking for better than all of us do. He has been aggressive in the transfer portal the last 2 years. Ole Miss has been able to get some guys out of the portal that they weren't able to get involved with as high school players. So that's been a big thing for him. I think that he's used the portal in a great way to build his roster, to build depth, and add star power. He's done an excellent job with it so far.
It kind of reminds me of like a young Steve Spurrier, right? Like just all these different quarterback arms. He's going to play different guys, and he'll just figure it out.
They're all going to play then? Is that what you're telling me?
Is he going to start throwing the visor? I don't know what he's going to do, but he's got some talent there. One other guy in this transfer class that I like, Chris Marshall, like Denver Harris, another highly ranked recruit coming out of Texas A&M. Didn't work out year 1 there. He goes to Ole Miss. Ole Miss, they have some NFL wide receivers running around making plays these days, so interested to see. They want to run the ball with Quinshon Judkins, but you have a guy on the outside, a big target like Chris Marshall, that kind of opens things up and unlocks things.
All right, we got a YouTube question here I want to get to. It's interesting. Steve, I'll ask you this. Which first-year coach has the best high school/transfer class this season? Not necessarily based off of rankings, but just fit.
Well, I think what Brett Venables was able to do in his first year at Oklahoma gives them a foundation to turn around a program that certainly didn't play to the standard that they're used to in Norman. I mean, this was a team that was 5-7 this year that boasted a defense that boasted is not the right word. Ran out a defense that ranked 129th nationally, Coach, I know you know Brent Venable as well. I don't think he's had many defenses that rank 29th nationally, let alone 129th nationally. But to go get Adebaware, one of the most electric pass rushers in the nation in this class, Peyton Bowen and Makari Vickers are very versatile playmaking defensive backs that will help get that secondary off and running. And then two terrific linebackers, Samuel Omashigo, who's one of the fastest linebackers in the country, Lewis Carter. I'll even throw Phil Picciotti in there. I think that he really upgraded the second level defenders in this class. Across the board, this defense is upgrading in every position room because of this recruiting class. Now it's going to take some time to develop these guys, but Coach Venables found the guys with the traits he's looking for that fits the scheme he wants to run, and I think it's only going to get better from here. And then he went out and landed arguably the best high school quarterback in the country in Jackson Arnold, who had a terrific junior and senior year, Gatorade National Player of the Year.
Venables getting them going. I'm going to go right here with Dan Lanning at the University of Oregon. I think he got the steal of the transfer portal when he plucked offensive lineman out of Rhode Island, A.J. Cornelius, a guy he went in and was able to grab for him, a guy with NFL potential and an NFL skill set. And another high school guy that I don't think we talk about enough in the Oregon class is Cole Martin out of Basha High School in Phoenix, Arizona. State championship game year this year. I got a chance to watch that team play on ESPN against Raiola, who's the #1 quarterback in the 24 class. And, man, that secondary gave him fits, led by Cole Martin at the University of Oregon. And I think that that's an excellent class, transfer portal and high school-wise. Lanning has been killing it in recruiting down the stretch.
I'm going to go Mario Cristobal in Miami. We keep kind of bouncing around from coach to coach.
You had the most time to think about it,
I know,
so I'm excited
I did.
to hear your
I
answer.
was punching away at the laptop right there. Javian Cohen, offensive lineman, comes over from Alabama. He started some games. Talked about it with them adding Francis Mauagoa, Samson Okunlola. They need help on the offensive line, so they get Javion Cohen, who came from Tuscaloosa. Matt Lee's a center that they got from UCF. Heard some talks that they think he's potentially an NFL guy. And then Devontae Brown, cornerback that is battle-tested there in the American Conference. He has played a ton of football. They need help in the secondary. His brother's also there as an incoming recruit, Damari Brown. So I think Mario Cristobal is doing a good job as he rebuilds that entire roster. I think retools it a good term. Got to tear it down, build it back up. He did it with the high schoolers, adding some depth in the transfer portal, and I assume they're probably not done. I mean, we got another window coming up after spring football before the season starts. All three of those guys we just talked about are going to be looking to make their teams better.
They are just getting started. Hey, if you have any questions, I'm monitoring the chat. I would love to hear from you guys. The only way, though, that you can get into the chat is by subscribing to the 24/7 Sports YouTube page, so go ahead and do that. Carl Reed, thank you as always for all your great insight. We appreciate it.
All right, guys.
All right, so we're 30 minutes into the show, and I think we've already talked about so many different schools, but we're going to highlight a few more here. We're calling these our biggest signing day splash schools. So let's start here with you in Arizona State. The obvious, adding Jaden Rashada, but overall, what is it about this Sun Devils day that stands out?
You're adding a top 247 talent at quarterback. Steve calls him one of the best pure passers of the football. I agree with that. He's also one of the oldest quarterbacks in the 2023 cycle. This is a guy that had his options. I thought TCU might have made the most sense for him. He ends up at Arizona State. He's going to team up with Kenny Dillingham, a bright offensive mind. We saw what he did with Bo Nix. Let's not forget, Bo Nix kind of had to resurrect his career and image when he left Auburn. A lot of people were happy to see him go, and then he shows up at Oregon, starts winning games. Jaden Rashada kind of drugged through the media over the holidays with the whole LOI thing. All of his business is out there for all of us to read. Now he goes somewhere where his dad played. I think it's a huge addition. We mentioned Drew Pine, the quarterback they took from Notre Dame. I think that's a perfect type of bridge quarterback. Let Drew Pine start some games, see how Jaden Rashada works in practice. Would not be surprised if he kind of gets himself some meaningful snaps in the season as it progresses.
The youngest head coach in the Power 5, bringing in his quarterback. Excited to see what Jaden Rashada does when he teams up with Dillingham. How about we go to South Carolina? And my favorite part about this class, guys, is even before the Nyckoles Harbor commitment, it felt like this show was sponsored by the Gamecocks. I mean, we already loved this class and everything that they did. And just, Steve, that cherry on top was Harbor.
Yeah, Nyckoles Harbor was obviously got a potential to be one of the game-breaking pass catchers on the next level, adding to a class that includes Vicari Swain from Carrollton, Georgia, who's also, in my opinion, one of the fantastic two-way players on the high school level. Over 2,000 yards receiving in his career, 17 touchdowns, 13 career interceptions. Colorado tried to flip Vicari Swain late. So Shane Beamer and his staff put together a great haul. It's ranked number 16 nationally. That's the highest they've ever finished in 24/7 sports history. And then they had to play keep away for a lot of the cycle. But they also swung a heavy spatula. They went out and flipped, in my opinion, one of my favorite quarterbacks in the cycle, Lenoris Sellers, who had a fantastic senior season. At one point was committed to Syracuse from in-state. South Carolina kept tabs on him, and in the midst of a great senior year where he threw for 3,000 yards, rushed for 1,000 yards, had 62 total touchdowns combined, and only turned the ball over twice, South Carolina lands him. And to go to find those 11 wins that they did, I think from 2012 to 2014, you got to have the guy under center, and I think Lenoris Sellers can be that guy. And then we've talked about it all day. They've recruited at the point of attack on both sides of the ball at an extremely high level. Really good offensive line class led by Tree Babalati and Marquis Anderson. And then on the defensive side, they got some real pretty guys, some pass rushers like Montague Rames. And so I think the arrow's up on South Carolina here with this recruiting class. And in 2024, we might see them ranked extremely high real soon. I think they got a big February on tap on the trail as they court maybe one of the best offensive lines in the country yet again in 2024.
Right, so I've got to ask you this. They landed the big fish, the 6th highest ranked prospect in South Carolina recruiting history. What are your early impressions of Shane Beamer on the trail?
Well, I mean, I think he's as aggressive a head coach as you're going to find in the country. I think that he takes his job as the spokesman of the program very serious when they recruit top targets. When you talk to the kids that South Carolina is recruiting, he has a presence with their priority recruits. And he's a tremendous ambassador for South Carolina. He loves Columbia. He loves where he just has a lot of pride in the university and believes that they can rebuild it into an SEC championship contender. And it resonates with their recruits on the trail. It resonates with the people in the building when they go out and recruit. There's just such enthusiasm and excitement around this program, and it certainly doesn't hurt to beat Tennessee and beat Clemson at the end of the year. That's also providing major momentum down the stretch here for South Carolina and bleeding into the beginning of 2024.
All about that momentum. All right, our final class here we want to highlight is Mississippi State, obviously dealing with the devastating loss of Mike Leach. Zach Arnett steps in, very difficult job for him to recoup this entire signing class, but it sounds like those guys really use this as a galvanizing effect to stick together, to come to Mississippi State and to live up to the high expectations set by the Pirate. But why are they a winner today, Andrew?
Well, Emily, we woke up and there's 5% of the player pool unsigned. I mean, there wasn't a ton of names out there, and Mississippi State goes out and does win 2 battles. They get Jonathan Davis, an in-state defensive lineman, late riser, big framed individual. Texas was kicking the tires there. I know Oma's kind of felt good last night. They get him in the class. That's a win over your rival. It's a point of attack player there in the trenches, so that's a big pickup. And then Will James, another late bloomer cornerback, had a great senior season, was a one-time committed to Southern Miss. I like this Mississippi State class as a whole. That's kind of, cherry on top for them. Again, not a lot of people added multiple players. Mississippi State found a way under a first-year head coach who's making a transition, making some difficult decisions in terms of how he assembles his staff. So you got to like what they're doing in Starkville. Nice little signing day for them.
Steve, how do you evaluate this Mississippi State class?
Well, I think when you look at it, I see 3 future pros right off the bat in the secondary. I think Isaac Smith is one of the best two-way players in the country, 823 yards rushing, 652 yards receiving, 18 touchdowns, picked off 9 passes, and had another interception in the Under Armour All-America game. And then I think that you look at the receivers there that they landed. They flipped Creed Whitmore from the University of Florida. I think that he'll be an excellent combination with Justin Brown from the state of Tennessee. Seth Davis is a running back that rushed for over 2,500 yards and 47 touchdowns there, 34 touchdowns for Katie High, a powerhouse. But back to the secondary, Kelly Jones and Bryce Pollock are a safety corner combination that I really like as well. I think that this is a very interesting recruiting class that'll make Mississippi State very competitive in the SEC.
Right, we have about 500 people watching our signing day recap show right now and 130 likes. Some quick calculations, that's only about 25% of viewers. So if you are watching and you're hearing my words right now, please hit that like button. It tells everybody that they should come join us on this party. Let's keep it rolling here, though, with our final segment here on today's show, and that is looking ahead to the 2024 class. That's right, you guys. We talked about it all day long about tying that proverbial bow on the 2023 class. So let's go ahead and look ahead to what's coming down the block in the next cycle. And how about the #1 class in 2024? The Georgia Bulldogs adding to their already great arsenal with Ellis Robinson committing today. But Steve, he is just one of many great prospects already in this Dogs class.
Yeah, he joins the #1 tight end in the country, Landon Thomas. Peyton Woodward and Jalen Hayward were two of the most coveted defensive backs in America. And DeMarcus Riddick is one of the top linebackers in the country. Those are 24/7 Sports consensus top 50 recruits right off the bat. We haven't even got to Dwight Phillips and his 4.2 speed as a running back. He's maybe the fastest player in the class early on. And then Nyckoles is a dynamic receiver. Landon Thomas's high school teammate there at Colquitt County. Georgia's off and running, as they should be. 2 straight national championships with a chance to add guys like Dylan Raiola, the #1 linebacker in the country, Sammy Brown, the #1 safety in the country who could also play receiver, KJ Bolden. There's a lot of elite players that are looking extremely hard at Georgia early in the cycle. But there's programs like Clemson and Ohio State trying to change those guys' minds.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up, right? We talked about Alabama and their class, Caleb Downs, Justice Haynes. Those are guys that Kirby Smart targeted very hard from the jump. They end up signing with Alabama. Now you look at KJ Bolden, Mike Matthews, Sammy Brown. Those guys are all in Georgia's backyard. Georgia's just won back-to-back national titles, right? Can they get these guys through? That's something I'm keeping an eye on as we look towards the next 12 months. And then I just think Georgia does an excellent job of making some evaluations. And they got a massive recruiting department there. They're on guys early. They had the national championship parade. Bunch of kids on campus, had a bunch of kids on campus this past weekend. I had a contact text me, what was it like? Oh, great vibe. And then, they just go on and add playmaker after playmaker. I mean, Georgia's recruiting nationally. They're resonating with the big dogs on both sides of the ball. So you said it, Steve, they could have the best class ever, when we're sitting here 11 months, 10 months from now, whenever it is during the early signing period.
Yeah, you saw that graphic. Already 6 players in the top 100, a part of this Bulldogs class, and we still have 11 months to go until those guys put pen to paper. A very exciting class building for Georgia. But how about Florida State? You talk about all the momentum that Georgia's got with the back-to-back national championships. Well, Mike Norvell's doing something down in Seminole country there. So what is it about Florida State and their 2024 class, #3 right now? What stands out to you early on, Andrew?
They've been aggressive, and they're getting commitments, and they're getting commitments from guys that believe in Mike Norvell and his vision. Luke Kromanoke, the quarterback that they have a commitment from. Mike Norvell took his commitment, and he had never even started a varsity game. Since then, he's picked up a ton of scholarship offers, Florida, Penn State, Tennessee. Everyone seems to be looking at Luke Kromanoke. We're very high in our rankings. I think the class starts with him. Cam Davis, the running back. Think Maurice Jones-Drew in terms of build. He's on the shorter side, but he's a stocky guy. Saw him playing 7-on-7 this past weekend. He caught everything out of the backfield. He's dynamic in the open field, and he plays quarterback on Friday night. So Florida State off to a hot start. I want to see what they do in South Florida this cycle. They just hired Pat Surtain, who is kind of a legend down in South Florida, former head coach at American Heritage. They want to make some noise there. They've worked satellite camps consistently at FIU, started to win some battles this year. Hakeem Williams, Conrad Hussey, they're the team that's kind of sitting at the top of the Big 3 rankings. Will it translate in 2024 when it comes to the recruiting rankings?
As they try and make that next move, they won 10 games this year. They beat LSU to start the season. Top 10 offense, top 15 defense. They need more dynamic guys that can change the course of a game with one touch of the football. Hakeem Williams is potentially that in 2023, but in 2024 they have Cameron Davis committed out of Albany, Georgia. His skill set kind of reminds me of Cam Akers. And then they have 2 receivers that I think are guys that are threats to score at any time they touch the football, and Camden Fryer and Tawaski Abrams. Those guys are elusive, quick, and then they can really run when they get in space. So this is a class that I think has some special skill talent in it already. And then as Andrew alluded to there, Luke Kromenhoek, he's a guy that impressed us this fall with the season he had and the traits that he's bringing to the table. I think he's a guy that could be a franchise caliber passer for Mike Norvell down the road.
All right, people in the chat here are clamoring for some Notre Dame talk. I didn't tell them that we were about to talk about Notre Dame, but how about it? We already have it planned out here. Marcus Freeman, we saw what he did with his first full official class. Looking ahead, though, to 2024, what stands out to you early on as Marcus Freeman looks to build his second official class? Steve?
Well, I think the thing that kind of stands out to me the most about Marcus Freeman is recruiting efforts as the head coach compared to when he was an assistant coach, because he was an electric recruiter at Cincinnati, and then obviously it showed up more in the mainstream at Notre Dame. Notre Dame will be looking for their fourth straight top 10 recruiting class in 2024. They're at number 4 right now, but it's the way that they've recruited quarterback under Marcus Freeman compared to the previous regime. Because look, Brian Kelly at Notre Dame had the Irish on the cusp several times. They played in a national title game. They've been to several college football playoffs. They've been to several other New Year's Six games. But I always thought they just left a little extra squeeze on the trail at the quarterback position, where Marcus Freeman, look, they were in the mix for Dante Moore. They were in the mix collectively for Jackson Arnold. But they end up getting Kenny Minchey, who I think is one of the more talented quarterbacks in the class, at one point committed to Pitt. He won the Pro Day competition at the Elite 11 finals, throwing against the best arms in the country. And that's a competition where you're making a variety of throws in a pressure situation all the way down the throw. And he rose to the occasion that evening and won that competition. And then CJ Carr, one of the most heavily recruited players early in the cycle at the position. He was a guy that Georgia targeted and what it took. Obviously, his grandfather's Lloyd Carr, Michigan, coveted him. Michigan State was in early, but Notre Dame, his relationship with Tom Rees, his belief in Marcus Freeman and the trajectory of that program, he wants to get a little bit away from home. He didn't want to go to college 10 minutes down the road at the University of Michigan, but Notre Dame's just far enough, but he just fell in love with the campus, and I'm starting to fall in love again with Notre Dame's quarterback room, which I thought was maybe lacking a little bit when you compare it to the other rooms that were stocked full of NFL talent.
For me, it's CJ Carr. I'm a big fan of him. I think I'm a little bit more of a fan than some of the other people on our rankings team, but I've seen him throw. I think he's got the prototypical frame. Steve brought it up. I mean, he could have went to Michigan. It would have made a ton of sense to go to Michigan, and Tommy Rees gets him locked up. I think he could win games. I like him a little bit more than Kenny Minchey. I like Kenny Minchey, but I view C.J. Carr as the quarterback of the future. And Steve, we had this conversation yesterday talking about Justin Scott, the top 100 defensive lineman. He pushes back his announcement date. You still have the crystal ball in right there for the Irish. I think if you're a Notre Dame fan, I want him to go take his visits, go check things out. The last thing you want is exactly what happened with Keon Keeley, right? Kid commits early, all of a sudden he starts taking visits, the SEC comes calling, and then you lose him at the buzzer, right? Fight that one to the end. Don't get him in the boat now and then just think it's a done deal, right? So to me, Justin Scott is the recruitment that I'm tracking.
Well, that's the most pivotal recruit left on the board for the Irish.
All right, we'll see what happens there. We got a question here in the chat, and I want to bring this up to you, Andrew. This is from Libby Scott. She watched our show last night, and you talked about, she said, I want to know what happened to the twins. I believe that she is referring to the Harris twins. Can you tell us what went down with their commitments today?
Well, we tried to get their the commitments on the show, and it just didn't work out. It was all over the place. Andrew did pick UCF. Michael picked Maryland.
So they split up.
They split up. And UCF has a history with twins, right? The Griffiths, they got Damari and Jakari Henderson last cycle. We saw at Illinois, Sidney Brown and Chase Brown. Chase Brown originally signed with Western Michigan, transferred, joined his brother at Illinois. Both those guys are probably going to get selected in the draft. So one of the more unique stories out there. I had to search for the example, found the Brown brothers at Illinois, but UCF's fired up that they got Andrew, and Maryland's fired up that they got Michael.
Yeah, I'm sure those fan bases are excited, but how are their parents feeling right now? I mean, that's going to be tough to follow both of them, but in this day and age of the transfer portal, who knows? Maybe they'll come together one day. We'll keep an eye on those Harris twins. You should keep an eye on this man, Andrew Ivins here, because he is all over the place. Look at that look that you're giving. You're so serious when it comes to football recruiting.
Not a fan of that photo.
Be sure to check out this great podcast with Andrew Ivins and Cooper Patagna called the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. New episodes dropping every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. If you like the podcast, if you like this show, if you like all the things that we do here, I bet you can guess what I'm about to ask the people to do. Please hit the like button. We are so close to 200. That would be a great way to just tie a bow on an awesome signing day, is to get to that 200 likes. But before we get there, I'm being told that we're actually going to do some viewer questions. I didn't know if we'd get time for this, but I'm excited because the viewers have been submitting a lot of questions. Everybody wants to know what happened today, what happened today. So we'll start here with Steve. Who is the most underrated commitment during this period? They also add, though, love the show, best recruiting coverage in the game. Who's underrated here?
Well, not that many people committed today, but how about Chimdi Ono, who
Yes.
opted to pick Penn State over Michigan State, top 247 offensive lineman, joining the Nittany Lions. Penn State with him in the fold. They have the number 13 class in the country and boast one of the best offensive line hauls in America as he joins Javen Williams, Alex Birchmeyer, and Anthony Donka. Those are all versatile athletic players at the point of attack that give Phil Trotwine, James Franklin and company some position flexibility. And I think as Penn State establishes them or tries to establish themselves again as a program that's an annual contender for the college football playoff, the way that they've recruited the offensive line this cycle is very impressive and gives them a chance for a lot of longevity of great offenses.
A lot of these are some pretty tough questions. I'm going to ask you this one. Which class of all the new Big 12 teams set themselves up to have a better next season?
Oh man, you're making me think here. I like what UCF did, and when we talked about the transfer portal, they've been just as active there under Gus Malzahn. I think they have a chance to come in and win some games. I was just up there in Orlando, actually kind of went through their facilities, talked with them, heard the pitch from Gus to recruits. They had an elite junior day going on. They brought up like 8 different times that Gus is the only active coach that has beat Nick Saban 3 different times. So I like UCF, what they did. Texas Tech, Joey McGuire, they just signed their best class ever. I like the quarterback, Jake Strong. You start digging into the pieces, you see the traits. It's all in-state kids. He's trying to sell a vision there. Obviously won some big games in 2023. So those are 2 off the top of my head. Houston also added a top 247 talent there. It's going to be interesting to see who does kind of rise to the top in that new look Big 12.
Yeah, a lot of transition happening in college football. Just wait till we're sitting in these chairs a year from now and we're talking about all the movement in the SEC and the Big Ten. This was just kind of our little warm-up here. Our next question comes from Justin. I'll throw this to you, Steve. Will Miami's 2024 class be better than their 2023 class?
Well, I think it'll be on par at the very least. We know that Miami, led by their head coach Mario Cristobal, is going to put them in position to recruit the top players in the country. Obviously, I think that they have some NIL things in order there that other programs don't. And so I think collectively all the things that Miami has to present to a recruit right now, it's a very enticing option.
I'll add right here, I mean, dug more into the 2024 class than some of these other states there in Florida. I think it's pretty deep. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be super top heavy with the blue chippers, but I think that next tier of player, the players that can come in and be developed, I really like that group, especially on the defensive side of the ball with the defensive backs. The one recruit I have circled for Miami right now is JoJo Trader. And I know you just fired in a crystal ball for the Hurricanes. I think he is a Miami type kid. He's a kid that's from the 305. They need playmakers at wide receiver. He's one of the best in the class when it comes to tracking the football. His teammate, Jeremiah Smith, our number 1 wide receiver, already committed to Ohio State. I don't think he's coming off that commitment, but JoJo Trader is one they can get. I think that's probably going to be a Florida State-Miami battle, and he could unlock a lot of different things for Miami. So that's the one I'm tracking for Mario Cristobal.
All right, you guys said not a lot of commitments today. We still have one left in the day. You can watch the William Spencer commitment, the 4-star defensive lineman. He will make his official announcement at 6:30 Eastern right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. Guys, we are so close to 200 likes. Let me go check real quick. We are 11 short, so if you like this video, go ahead and show us by hitting that like button. If you like everything that we did today, please subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube page because we are doing this all the time. I know we blow up these big shows and these signing days, and these are, some of our favorite days in the industry because we finally get to kind of flex that muscle, right? All the research, all the work that you guys have been doing all season long. We love days like today, but the work does not stop. We have live shows almost every day of the week here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page, so highly recommend you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We're so close to 200, but I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye because this was such a fun day. Thank you both for all of your great intel. Thank you to everybody who joined us all day long. I'm hearing we did hit 200, so I can officially say goodbye. Thank you again. This is the College Football Recruiting Show. Have a great night.